Hey, so I watch a lot of YouTube videos. It's one of my main pastimes. After a hard day at work, I just kick back and watch some YouTube videos. Sometimes, that will take me to weirder parts of the internet.
It's that time of the year again, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the 7th annual muffin tier list. If you've been on this channel...
But a lot of the content that I do consume is going to be, food and baking videos and cooking videos. I mean, that's half of the reason why I wanted to start making these things myself. But you know what's kind of annoying? You're watching an instructional cooking video. You go through all the trouble of getting the ingredients, you get all your prep work done, you get all your materials, and you make it, and it comes out nothing like what it shows in the video.
What the?
So I thought, hey, I know a couple things about baking. Maybe I can take a video of something cool that I wanted to make and I can analyze it, break it down, and share my findings with you guys. So today we're gonna go through a video for a fluffy, cheesy, Korean style garlic bread by this YouTube channel called Cooking Tree. So with all of this in mind, let's get to it. Okay, let's get started. Let's watch it. Oh, give me 1 second. Okay, great. All right, let's pause it right here. We have a list of the ingredients, and what this is basically telling me is that from the ingredient list, we have warm milk, water, yeast, sugar, bread flour, salt, unsalted butter, and then we have a second half actually. Cream cheese, unsalted butter, crushed garlic, honey, salt, parsley, mozzarella cheese. When it comes to these recipes, they sort of split it up. So the first part is usually the dough section, and the second part is what's on top. If I'm looking at the very top part, the dough, it looks like there's milk and sugar and as well as butter in this bread. So it's gonna be a pretty rich dough, especially noticing how there's gonna be 30 grams of unsalted butter. That's a lot of butter to just kind of throw in there. My guess is that once the dough is formed, they're gonna incorporate the butter into it afterwards. For the bottom half, with the cream cheese, it's gonna be really creamy. And then there's also honey. So it's gonna be a tiny bit of a sweetness to it. Like honey, garlic, sweet and salty type of thing too. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing just based off of the ingredients list. I already have an idea as to what they might be doing in this. Yeah, milk, water, activating that yeast into that bowl. Sugar is also going to activate that yeast, going to make it a lot more, active, start bubbling up. Mixing it all together. Adding the rest ingredients, mixing it all together, dumping all the flour into once. You could probably also just do this with a bread machine as well, or like a stand mixer. And so the dough is starting to roughly become formed now. Once that gluten is starting to develop, then yes, okay, they're adding in the rest of the butter and they're incorporating that butter into the dough. Transferring it to another bowl, I think that's strictly due to aesthetic reasons. You could totally just keep it in the same bowl and it would be the exact same thing. It's doubled in size, punching it down to expel the excess gas. Pretty much putting it into a sort of a ball shape. They round it first so that it spreads more evenly, flattening it down. Again, this is just to make it into more of a pizza shape. Intermediate proof. And then yeah, here's the second half of the ingredients where they're basically mixing in the rest of it to make the sort of the spread topping. There's the honey, okay. You're going for that sweet, savory. Parsley just to make it look a little bit nicer as well. It makes it look like that, garlic butter that you'd see at restaurants and things like that. Taking it, spreading it on top. The green specks make it look a little bit fancier, a little bit nicer. He's making divisions. He's gonna be putting mozzarella cheese in between those. I don't know if, to be honest with you, I don't know if this is 100% necessary. Yeah, this honestly, to me, if I was just to make this, I probably wouldn't do this. It just seems like a lot of extra work. It probably is, aesthetically nice and all of that stuff, but for practical reasons, maybe not. Sprinkle more parsley for some color contrast. See, yeah, it looks really nice, right? But the divisions I don't know if it really helps it break apart easier. I still think you would need to cut it afterwards, right? It's tearing here and it's not coming apart as nicely as he'd want it to be. Yeah, I think it's shown here. He has to really grip the two pieces. Yeah, here especially, it's not tearing that nice. So yeah, that seems like pretty straightforward based on what I'm seeing. Let's get to it.
Alright, so this is me following the video's instructions and replicating this recipe. So I started off by grabbing all the dry ingredients, flour, salt, yeast, and sugar, and mixed them all together. I transferred this into my mixing bowl and added my milk and water, then I turned on the machine to mix it again. So you'll notice I'm doing a few things a little differently here. When it comes to yeast, there are two types that you can probably find in your grocery store: active dry yeast and instant yeast. If you're using active dry yeast, you'll need to activate it first by adding it to a liquid, and I think water works best. Milk actually has an enzyme that can slow down the growth of yeast. Sugar is added to help activate the yeast, but I would prefer scalding the milk first if you're going to use this method, just to get rid of that enzyme. Instant yeast can be added straight to your dry ingredients as long as it's not directly touching the salt. I think that this is easier and less hassle, so I'll almost always use this method instead. The video also shows adding the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, and I actually do the exact opposite. This whole step is really just to combine everything together and to hydrate the flour. I did a window test to check for proper gluten development, and that looks pretty good to me. With my base dough formed, I'm going to enrich it by adding butter pieces a little at a time. Again, butter can really interfere with gluten development, so I add it at the very end once the dough is like 80 to 90% developed. Butter prevents dough from coming together, and it needs to be added in small chunks a little bit at a time. You need to make sure it's pretty much fully incorporated before adding more. The video shows them dumping all the butter in at once, but it doesn't show how long they're working that dough for. So now I have a super enriched dough, almost like a brioche. I'm gonna cover this and set it aside for about an hour so that it can bulk ferment. While that's resting, I start making the spread to put on top of the dough. Taking the butter, garlic, and cream cheese, I weigh it all out and put it into a bowl. From there, I blend all of these ingredients together. It's important that your butter and cream cheese are at room temperature so that these can blend evenly. If it's too cold, you'll get chunks of butter or cream cheese in your spread. If you forgot to leave these out, you can put them into a microwave and then use like 5-second bursts to soften them up. You want them to be soft but not melted. Now I adjust the flavor with some salt and honey as per the video, and I then add some parsley to give it some visual appeal. So it's been about an hour and the dough has doubled in size and it's bubbling. I deflate the dough and put it onto a well-floured surface. What I notice is that this dough is kind of sticky, so I had to add more flour so that I could work with it. I round it into a ball, flatten it out, and begin to roll it into a pizza shape. It was still kind of sticky here, so I added more flour as needed so I could continue to work it into a circle. I knew I wanted to bake it on parchment paper to make the cleanup easier, so I got it ready and transferred my dough. Then I covered it with plastic for about 15 minutes for an intermediate proof. This intermediate proof will give it a chance to relax, then you can re-stretch it before putting on the garlic spread. I then followed the video's instructions and made the segmentations. But as I was putting on the cheese, I realized that you actually need to cut the dough very deep, or else these indentations won't be super helpful. The dough will bake and the cheese will be forced out of the segmentations you've made, so it won't actually make it easier to pull apart once it's baked, which is what I think they're going for. Regardless, I bake it in an oven for 18 minutes at 170 degrees Celsius or 340 Fahrenheit. At 18 minutes, mine didn't look nearly ready. The dough looked underbaked, and the cheese wasn't golden brown either. With my oven, I definitely needed to bake it longer. After another 5 to 7 minutes, it looked a lot better, but definitely not like the video. I decided to cut it with a knife just to make my analysis a little bit easier. Alright, so now that we're finished, let's go over a couple things. I did screw up a couple parts. I forgot to sprinkle more parsley on top, and I didn't use mozzarella cheese. The parsley would have made it look a lot better. The mozzarella cheese stretches way nicer than the cheese that I used. I also hear that pre-shredded cheese in packages has like anti-clumping agents. So if you're really going for that cheese stretch, you may want to shred your own. So that was my mistake. Their garlic bread has a little more of a sheen on top of it. This could be due to them using only mozzarella cheese. They could have used more garlic spread, or a lot of bakers will brush melted butter on their product immediately after it comes out of the oven to give it a shine. Overall, the taste itself is pretty good. I noticed that due to the honey in the garlic spread, it was a little on the sweeter side. This is definitely not a Western style garlic bread because it was super soft and not as salty. For trying a recipe I found in a video, it turned out relatively well. I would definitely eat it again, but if I'm going for something that looks really pretty, I'd be more strict about what cheese I use. To wrap it all up, when it comes to making something that tastes good, you have a lot more freedom and you can definitely switch up ingredients to suit your taste. But when it comes to replicating the aesthetics and how it looks and feels, you need to follow the recipe a little bit more closely because there are reasons why they use certain ingredients or techniques. One of the takeaways is that with baking, specific methods are used to give the product a specific look, texture, or feel. And if you substitute something without knowing what that ingredient does, your product may not look like the product in the video. Anyways, I hope me analyzing and trying to replicate this recipe gave you a little bit of insight about some of the techniques that they use and why they use them. If you're planning on using a video recipe, make sure you read the comments and descriptions to get as much information as you can. If they have a website version, all the better. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a comment, drop a like, and subscribe for more videos. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.